And good evening, Fabrianoinacquarello 2021. And we are in our last day at the section with lecture. And we have today with us, and we are very happy, Francesca Ciaudano from Dubai, but she's Italian. I tell you, she's a watercolorist and she's also expert in many other fields. And she will do her lecture about watercolor for well-being. Francesca, please present yourself and you can start with your lecture.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks a lot. And thanks for Fabrianoinacquarello to having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to bring a message which I hope is going to help some people in the same way in which it helped me. So the question, what I do, used to be a simple question many years ago, till recently, as I used to be a marketeer and working for a Fortune 500 company. I had 20 years experience in creative industry, marketing and advertising. But recently, and I will tell you a bit later, I changed my life. And now when people ask me what do I do, it's much more complex to answer. So what I would say is that above all, I'm an artist who wants to change the common perception that we have around art, as I believe that art is a form of medicine. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to also take you through the three main steps, the main three things that I discovered through my journey, which I hope are going to help you as well in your journey. But before I do that, I want to take you back in time. I want to take you to April 2019. We are in Dubai, as Anna mentioned. I'm sitting in my office, so my life hasn't changed yet. I'm still a marketeer. I'm still working in a corporate environment. And it's kind of late, and I'm sitting in this open space, and it's past 9, and everybody's already left. And as I'm sitting in front of my screen, I have this feeling and asking myself, pondering on why I cannot feel happy, why I feel drained and exhausted and frustrated, even though I have a career that took me 25 years to build, and many believes is a successful career from the outside. There is this feeling of having disengaged from my life. There's this feeling of not being connected to my Monday to Thursday, to my first life. And it's like, I'm sure most of us knows the feeling of where you are in a relationship and you know that the relationship is not working any longer, but you don't know if you're gonna find anything better. And so you stay in that situation for longer. And that's what I found myself doing. And that's what I realized I was doing. I was waiting for the weekend to self-express, to do the things I wanted to do. And I started feeling that wasn't enough. So while all this was happening in my mind, still sitting in this office, still in front of my computer, my hands start writing and start typing a letter, and the letter title and the subject was resignation letter. My mind was somewhere else. I was still thinking about why I couldn't be happy of the career I had, why I felt that emptiness. And as simply as that, in a few minutes, the resignation letter was ready, and I pressed send, click, and the resignation letter was sent. So at that point, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no idea who I was, and I had no idea that art would come in my life and change the way in which it did it. So the first thing I did that time when I resigned, a couple of months after when I was out of the company, I went back home to Italy. My mom is a watercolorist, and I never been interested in painting, but that time there was something different. And I remember I was sitting with her, and it was also a friend of her name is Lolly, she might be even watching now. And they kind of initiated me to a new dimension. They start asking me to offer me paper and colors, and that's how I start using watercolor. During this process, that was just the initiation, but during the process I start discovering the power of creativity, how art can heal us, how it can help us finding clarity and meaning. And that's where my journey with watercolor started. So now I'm on this mission of changing the way in which we look at art, not as something that needs to be confined in a museum or in a gallery or something that is only for the few, but something that is as natural as breathing.
Francesca, let me tell the audience that you come from your mom and Lolly and from Raffaele Ciccaleni background, because all over the world, Raffaele at least is very well known. So the people may like to know this. Now, coming back to you, you have a very interesting background, amazing, and you are not a traditional artist at all. Today you are using watercolor, as you said, thank you to your mother and to Raffaele background. Can you tell us what do you do and how watercolor changed your life?
Yes, for sure. So basically, as I started noticing the change in the way in which I was living, and I will take you a bit later how and the three things that really happen in my life through art and how art can help us. But basically in the journey, I started noticing that my brain was changing, my way of reacting to stress and trauma was changing, the way of knowing myself was changing. And so after this process of self-discovery, I started getting into a journey of wanting to know more, of validating the experience I was having through knowledge that I could find somewhere else. And that's why I started a journey that put me in touch with many interesting people like you, Anna. I got in touch with a neuroscientist, a researcher, writers, therapists, all in the search of knowledge to confirm and validate the experience I had on my own. And one person led me to another on this incredible journey of discovering that art was more than what I had expected. And it's interesting because, as I said, one of the things that I started doing was speaking with neuroscientists, because this is something that I'm kind of keen to do independently from art. I'm always been interested to find out what happens in our biology, in our brain when we do a certain action. And some of the findings, they all confirm that the human brain is uniquely wired for art. So this is something that people did since the beginning of time. So if you remember, the first things that we remember from humanity are drawings within a cave. So there has always been a reason to do art from the past times, from the thousands of years. The formal concept of art as therapy or art therapy is something though relatively new. So some of you might be interested to know that it was formed in 1942 by English artists. And art therapy has become since then a recognized field. Now, my space and my way of acting is not in art therapy. I'm not an art therapist. I want to be clear on that. To become an art therapist, especially in some to claim that you're an art therapist, especially in some countries, you need to be legally registered and you need to have done 3 years of studies. So this is a different kind of topic and learning on how to use art in clinical settings. My way of approaching art is something that I would say is much more easy and accessible to all. And it might come as a surprise to most of you because I know that many of you are artists, so they've been trained as artists, but I believe that art is innate in us. Art is something that's, and creativity, we don't need a special training and we don't need a special talent to be able to use it for our personal purpose and for our development. So I think like as meditation and as breathing, art is accessible to everyone. And that's the finding and the point that I want to bring forward with the work I'm doing. So Ellen Disani-Yaken, if you are interested in the topic of art for healing and anthropology, you can check some of her books. She's a really good writer and teacher on the topic. So she wrote that making art is an innate tendency of human. This tendency is so strong that people argue that like voice and tool making, artistic activities can be used to define mankind. And that's the true, I believe, the true meaning of why we are all making art across culture and across time. So those are the three buckets in which I will take you through today. A bit of knowledge, a bit of science behind, a bit of my experience, and also I'm going to give you tips on how to be able to use it in your own practice if you're not already. The first one is art as medicines. So I believe that art can heal. Art as knowing, as art allows us to see beyond our logical mind, and art as imagination, as the practice of art can help us look into different opportunities and new ways of looking at the world. So if we start with the first one, art as medicine. So if I go back to the experience I told you when I left you and at the point where I was initiated to watercolor, that was June 2019. And since then I decided, as I had quit my job without knowing what I was going to do, to take a period of sabbatical. And that sabbatical was a very interesting one where, like most of the people who go for a sabbatical, they start ticking off all the items from their from the bucket list. So I lived as a monk, I went on traveling, I wrote a book, and I kept going on trying to find some answers about myself, about who I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to do in this life, what is my purpose, why I felt that urge to leave a job and do something else. In the process of these experiences, art is something that I never stopped. So I continue practicing, I continued working with watercolors. And then COVID arrived. And as for many of us, that's where the truly inner journey started. This is where through trauma, through loss, through fears, a lot of things start coming to the surface. And this is when I start practicing the in and the out non-stop. And I start noticing that I could tolerate traumatic emotion, anxiety, and stress much better than any other practice that I have done. And I can tell you I've done a lot of practices from meditation to yoga, to mindfulness, to many, many more. But nothing had given me the chance to tolerate anxiety and stress and restore inner strength as much as art was doing. And the technique I was using, and this is one of the things that I realize is very important when we use art as a form of medicine, was watercolor and abstract art. I have no training profession as an artist, so for me abstract at first was an instinct way to move into my practice. But in reality, something that I realize is my own language. And why watercolor? Because watercolors is one of the medium that allows you to be extremely loose, extremely fluid, and train our brain or let go of control much more than some other more of different kind of paintings. So, and for me, it was very difficult to learn how to let go. You know, I had trained myself on a career of 20 years where I had to be projected in the future. I had to know what the objectives to achieve were. And so all my performance in my job has always been in a way in which I've never been in the present. I've always been projecting what I had to achieve. So with watercolor and abstract art, I allow myself to let go of that, to let go of the pressure of the expectation of the outcome. What am I here creating? I don't know what I'm here creating. I'm just enjoying the process of playing with the colors, see how they form, how they play with the water, and just be present in the moment. And that's where the healing started for me. That's allowing me to be in the present, so totally taken aback in the process without knowing and without caring about what the outcome of the art piece was. So this letting go, for me, is the key part of having to use art as a form of medicine. Now, there are evidence everywhere, especially as neuroscience has started study the impact on our brain of making art, that the engagement in art is an integral part of healthy living and healthy aging. The WHO has recognized art as a way to treat aging, long-term conditions, loneliness, and mental health. And today, because of that, there are countries which are moving into prescribing art for stress, for reduction of stress and depression and loneliness. Some of the I will say from my research, the country which is most advanced in this is UK, is England. And on one of those such programs which I've studied, which was run in Gloucestershire and Wiltshire, show that the GP consultation, so GP is a general practitioner, is our doctor, the rates of the consultations for people that started a program of arts on prescriptions reduced by 37% and hospital admission by 27% and representing a total saving of £216 per patient. So we are not talking just about a feeling that we are getting better, we are actually talking about science proving that art is good for our health. And I believe that's what makes art good as a non-medical intervention to well-being is the fact that people want to now start being more and more involved in their recovery. Most of the people are not willing to receive treatments which are administered by others passively. They want to be able to feel that they're getting better. They want to be able to be part of the process. And with art, we are not just receiving, we are making. And that's why it makes it a very strong non-medical intervention. So art as medicines, as I mentioned, artistic expression has a unique and timeless ability to touch every person in personal crisis or collective distress like the period that we are passing through now, hopefully getting out of now. And healing through art is one of the oldest cultural practice in every part of the world. So how we can heal both making art and also looking at art. So making art, I'll give you an example from a journal of art therapy. It's been proved that 45 minutes long art making sessions makes 3/4 of the participants experience lower less of stress hormone cortisol, regardless of any ability, artistic ability. And the cortisol is the main stress hormone that we have in our system. Looking at art, so not just making art, also looking at art is something that heals us. And Elaine de Botton and John Armstrong in their Art as Therapy, another very interesting book, wrote that even looking at art is a therapeutical medium and can help guide and console the viewers, enabling them to become better version of themselves. So now, when it comes to mental health, which is one of the hot topics that everybody's kind of talking about today, we know that even before COVID, 40%, about half of the global population at some point, by the age of 40, would have had some mental health issues. And the challenges of the pandemic for maintaining mental wellness, managing fear and uncertainties, had just made this even worse. We don't have the data yet available, but we know that this is going to be worse than what it used to be before. And we were already talking about nearly half of the population by the age of 40 suffering of mental health issues. So I believe that now is the time to think differently when it comes to how we engage with our minds. And as artists, as practitioners, as an artist lover, I think our true purpose of making art is to use art at the service of human race. With all the data that we are that coming out now and that will come in the future, because there are currently a lot of research in the field, we're going to be given also the support from a scientific point of view. But the true purpose of art, in my point of view, especially in this time of history, has to be a service of human race. One of the examples of the epitome, I would say, of the use of an artist, of art as therapy, is Frida Kahlo. I'm sure you all know her, and you know that she had to overcome challenges through creativity. Frida was, she got sick at 6 years old with polio, and 18 years old, she was in a terrible bus accident, which basically turned her into a stage of chronic illness throughout her life. And she had many more other traumas. But basically throughout her life, she lived with relapse of tremendous pain and fatigue. And she taught herself how to paint during the initial recuperation good to start processing the traumatic emotion and the pain itself. And she wrote, I'm happy to be alive as long as I can paint. So I think she's one of the strongest representation of how art, we go intuitively to art and we use art to heal and to feel better.
Francesca, can you tell us how it works, this kind of art as medicine?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to speak about art as medicines. And I think from what I have gathered speaking with experts, we are only at the surface of understanding of what art can do for us. So I'm going to speak from my own experience. And from my own experience, I think the feeling of being in the flow and the letting go is what allows for us to heal. I don't know if you're familiar with the state of flow. So the psychologist, I hope I pronounce his name right, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, wrote about this state of being in the flow as a place where you go beyond the point of distraction, where you're deeply focusing on something and you're so absorbed in what you're doing that you lose control of time. And this is when basically there are a lot of benefits that comes in our systems. So they've been proved and they've been measured. So when it comes from neuroscience of flow, we know that there are changes in our brain when we act and we are in flow. And other research suggests that there is increased activity of dopamine. Dopamine is a brain chemical involved in pleasure and motivation. And this is something that is happening when we are in flow. We get better in regulating our emotion. We get a greater enjoyment and fulfillment. We feel happier than because we are in a positive mental state. So we also learn better because there are research that found that we can enhance performance in areas like teaching, learning, and athletic. As I'm sure if you have heard of flow, you might have heard it attached to sport activities, but also artistic creativity. So it's about being in the state where you allow yourself to let go and without expectation on what you are creating. I've seen many artists, especially when you are extensively trained, you tend to be so grossed into the expectation or the frustration of not being happy with the outcome of what you're building or what you're creating, that you totally missed out on the most important part of art, which is really let go. Just let go of any expectation and just be in the process, because being in the process brings you in the state of flow, and that's where healing, positivity, happiness, creativity is kind of flourishing.
Francesca, I think that all artists know very well what you mean by the kind of flow of state. It is what artists sometimes recognize as the state of grace.
Correct.
We don't usually speak about it, actually. And thank you for telling us about it. We know it is that state when you feel better, when you paint without knowing why.
Yeah.
And but what about the second stage as art knowing? Yeah. I heard that you were talking about the fact that art helps us to see. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, thank you, Anna. So before I start telling my experience in this area, I want to start with a quote from Paul Klee, and his quote is, "Art does not produce what we see, it makes us see." And I think this is a very simple statement, but it's very powerful truth in what and how we can use art for. So from a psychological point of view, as when we are doing art, or whenever we are creating or enjoying an artwork, or even the act of looking at something, we simultaneously perform some cognitive activity. So the cognitive activity that are happening as we perform or look at art are, firstly, they help us understand and make sense of the world. as around us and our life. The second one help us to capture more effectively information. So what does that mean? It means that art can be used as a means for educational learning. And the third one, which is the one where I want to focus today, is the self-discovery. So through artistic expression, people are become aware of more of what they cannot understand otherwise, what they cannot understand with the spoken language and what they cannot understand with their logical mind. So about this, as I said, art help us to see. So what if I need to take an example? I feel that we are all in a constant state of negotiation throughout our life, throughout our day, even when we don't realize. We always let go of our true nature to be within a certain set of rules. Rules of family rules, job rules, communal rules, societal rules. And we tend to conform to those rules. Mostly because we fear judgment, we fear rejection, we fear humiliation. So we tend to repress the self-expression. And we tend to reproduce what we know already without going deeply in finding our own language. And additionally, we're not fully transparent to ourselves in a way or the other. So we feel emotion. We know when we are not feeling well, but in reality, we don't really know why. So why we are feeling in a certain way, in some cases, is very difficult to pin down. We can take assumptions, but it's all assumptions that we take through our logical mind. So when we paint, we actually enter a state of, as we said before, of letting go and letting that knowledge come through us, from within us on paper. So we start developing a non-intellectual knowing of what we have within us. And so the experience of painting, if you're a painter or not, give the opportunity to connect that consciousness with unconsciousness, that knowledge that you have within us in the part of the brain that we cannot access with logical mind. I think that Georgia O'Keeffe put it very well when she discussed her paintings. She mentioned, I found I could say things with color and shapes that I couldn't say any other way. Things I had no words for. So it's that kind of non-intellectual knowing that we achieve through the making of art. So that some studies and some psychologists has also taken it further, mentioning that and believing that art leads to a scientific knowledge of ourselves. So we can basically reach a similar knowledge that you can reach scientifically, but just through a totally different way of approaching to life. And it's kind of mirroring our life. So we making art are about to understand what we have not understood yet. And in my own practice, and that's why I'm so keen on abstract, I think abstract gives us a way to access the invisible. So it's like, what can you really see when there's nothing to see, right? And if you give a piece of abstract, and I've done this exercise many times to people, every person will tell you that they see something different. So it's that kind of seeing beyond what you can really see, because there is not much to see apart of colors and shape, obviously, in an abstract piece. So, and through this process, and I will take you later through an exercise, but we might come to know ourselves better. Art builds a kind of self-knowledge that the picture can take out of our brain and our mind. Now, one of the things I like to point is that through history, the role of creators of meaning has been mostly given to critics, to journalists, to curators, to art historians. And I think this is a way of adding and creating meaning to an art piece which lacks meaning in a way, in the sense that it's a sanitized version of art. We apply rules to art to interpret, to be interpreted and to be read and to create meaning. And we take most of the time ourselves as artists out of the participation. So art knowing is that process that allows the artist to go back into the participation, to be the creators of the meaning for himself.
Francesca, can you give us an example on how it works in practice? Is it possible?
Of course. So what I will say as this painting, I hope you can all see it on the screen, is something that I did. Actually, let me take a step backward before I take you through the example of my experience. So when we look at art, we need to treat our piece as our teacher. So the interpretation is essential in the art as seeing. So in the first phase we spoke before, it's about healing, allowing ourselves to feel better, being in the flow, being in the grace, as you mentioned. Here, as the piece is complete, we interpret the piece. We ask, we speak to the painting who has become our teacher. And that is critical in this process. So what I usually do when I finish a piece, I ask the actual piece what I need to know. What is it telling me? What is the message I need to know from what I just painted? Sometimes it might come immediately, sometimes it might take weeks or months, but from my own experience, I can tell you, there's not been one time where an art piece done in the way of letting yourself go has not taken out a piece of knowledge about myself that I was not able to access with my logical mind. And now I'll give you an example through this piece. So this piece is something that I painted on a day in beginning of 2020. So it was, I was already, and I left the job, I was consulting as marketing. So and I had several clients throughout the day. It was a quite intense day and it was quite stressful. I had few not pleasant conversations and some others were really, really, really pleasant. So it was a combination of things, but I ended up the day feeling that I had something in my body that was really needed to be released. I didn't feel good. And as I told you earlier, sometimes we just don't feel good and we don't know why. So the practice of using art for healing has taught me that anytime that I feel the sense of something is not quite right, that's when I want to paint. Because that's when there is something that is stuck within me, which is not accessible in my logical mind, that I can put on paper. So I start painting this piece that is in front of you. And as I couldn't let go of control, I added so much water that it took almost all night to dry. So there is nothing controlled on the outcome of what you see here in front of you. So when I woke up in the morning and I went and see it, I didn't really like it. I didn't like the colors. I couldn't see much of shape. And I was just like, okay, yeah, fine, let me try. So I took the piece in my hands, I started turning it, and I started asking what it is that I need to know. And then is when I start realizing, turning it, because it wasn't turned that way when I painted it, that there was a face. So I don't know if you can see it, and I can't really point it, but there is like a face on the bottom of the painting with the eyes. There is no mouth, and the one on top are just hair. So that's the interpretation I gave. That's the meaning that I gave. But this is still an interpretation from a logical mind. When we ask the painting to reveal what we need to know, when we treat the painting as our teacher, what we need to focus on are the feelings and the insights that we get out of this conversation. And the insight were something of, so there is no mouth. I call it the mouthless woman, because during the day I had one of the meetings I had was a meeting where I had to suppress what I really wanted to say for the fear of losing the client. And I didn't notice back then that I had done that. And I didn't notice how much that had caused me some sense of I'm not feeling quite right. So that was just an instance during the day. But apparently the impact that I had on my subconscious was much higher than what I had realized. And I would have not realized till this teacher and this painting would have shown it to me. So I learn, and every time I see this piece, it reminds me how to say no. The fact that I'm saying no doesn't mean that a contract or relationship is ending. And that's the reminder that this piece is bringing to me. So it's all about asking and expecting the feelings and the insight to come to give you that haha moment where you will start noticing and learning things about you that your logical mind cannot access otherwise. I hope this has answered your question.
Francesca, this was really interesting, and art being the heals and art being the helper for us to see, it's really important. But then what is the last stage of your journey?
Okay, the last stage is art as imagination. So I see them as a cyclical phase. I could not get into art as seeing if I didn't let go, so I didn't allow the art to heal me. So then I allow myself to see, and then I allow myself to start seeing new opportunity, new possibility into my life. So I think art helps us in that process. So imagination, why I talk about imagination? Because I believe that imagination is the most important tool we possess. In both ways, it can make us good and it can harm us. It allows us to see possibility even during the harsh of the situations, and we might have know more now after the last year that we have just went through. It creates the sense of resilience. So if we can imagine different possibility to what we are currently experiencing. At the opposite, imagination can also do the opposite. If we don't see the opportunities, if we believe that is not possible, our imagination cannot take us there, and therefore we will still live every day as we did in the past, right? So we're gonna recreate in the future everything that we already lived in the past, because our imagination is not able to give us any different way of looking at life. And that's why I believe that we need to train our imagination. We need to train through art and through presence, an opportunity to see things differently. So one example I will take is, I'm a living example in the sense that 2 years ago, when I was initiated to watercolor, I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know who I was going to become and what I will make as a profession. And definitely I would have not imagined I was going to become a selling artist and or neither being involved with art for wellness, which has now become my career. So that imagining of opportunities was made possible only because of practice of art. During the practice of art, I start seeing different ways of being, different opportunities of framing my reality. And if I hadn't done that, I would have probably continued looking for a similar job to the one that I had already left, because that's what I did. That's what I knew myself represented. And that's how I shape and describe myself. So through the practice, with all the things that we talked till now, I actually allow myself to start looking into the future without being affected by who I have been in the past. And I think that's allow us to shape the way in which we can see reality. So one of the things that I will ask you to consider, and you can answer in your mind now, or you can take a piece of paper and pen after, is what are your beliefs about imagination? Do you hear yourself thinking something like, it's only your imagination when you see things that are outside your comfort zone? So are you associating a positive or negative meaning to imagination? So do the exercise later and start understanding whether you're open to imagination, to change the way in which you look at your life and the changing way in which you are living, or if you associate a negative meaning to imagination, because if you're just imagining it, it's not possible and therefore you can't create it. I believe, and this is written in every piece of my work, that imagination is the preview to the life you can build, and creativity is the way to bring it to life. So the two things together go hands in hands. You need to be able to see it first, and then you can create it. If you can't see it, if you can't imagine it, you will not be able to change the way in which you're living. And that's why, for me, art is so important when it comes to to imagination, because it gives us the opportunity to train our brain to be more flexible, to see more options, to go beyond fear, and allow to let go to what we know already, to make space to what we don't know.
And Francesca, did you also include a kind of meditation in your practice? And if so, can you tell us a little bit more about how you practice?
Yes, so I've been meditating for the last 6 years, and I meditate. I do what is called Vipassana meditation. So I go sometimes a retreat of 10 days where you are in total silence and living as a monk. But that is not required for art as imagination and to train our imagination. So what I want to tell you is that the imagination is similarly in the way in which it works through meditation can be exercised. So it's like a muscle that we can exercise through practice. And I want to take you a bit through that, so that it's something that you can take away with you and practice regularly. So it's like basically stocking a fridge. You start putting all the ingredients inside the fridge of things that you want to cook for dinner. So you have imagined a recipe, right? And you put all these ingredients. So in the same way, art can bring forth what we have only imagined before and allow the image to take form in the process. So unless we start being aware of the images that we have around us, we will only keep seeing only what we are used to. So that's how our brain works. Our brain sees, I don't remember the number, but there is a staggering number of images and signal that goes through our brain every day. What we pay attention to are only the things that either we are familiar to, that they answer to our needs, or things when something that surprises happens. So a beautiful, stunning sunset that you've never seen before, or a car accident on the streets when you're driving back home. So those are the things that we notice. So to practice imagination, we need to start practicing seeing images constantly around us. So the first steps is to have no expectation in mind from the process of imagining and seeing and noticing. So I want to take you through the exercise. So if you can stop looking at the screen for a moment, sit back in a relaxed posture, let your eyes fall around you on all the images of what you see around you. For instance, I have my desk in front of me, I have plenty of books, I have notes, I have colors, I have pens. So just paying attention to what you see around you, okay? And then just pick one image to follow. Notice its colors, the shape, the texture, the details. Where does it lead you? Appreciate the richness of this image as the richness of possibility. And now start imagining an artwork based on this image. What it will look like? What colors will you use? What paper? What technique? And now, if you can safely close your eyes. So if you're not driving, you can safely close your eyes. Just close your eyes now. Shift your attention to breathing. I want you to take 3 deep breaths with the exhale longer than you inhale. So we breathe in gently and we breathe out. We do it again. We breathe in and we breathe out. And once more, we breathe in and we breathe out. Now, move your attention to the pit of your stomach. What is the sensation that you feel there? The image that you have picked, which kind of feeling does it stir in you? And now, if you have crossed legs, uncross them, and start paying attention to the feet on the floor. How does it feel? Touch the floor. How does it feel to be in your shoes? And now just let it go. You can let go of the sensation on your body. You can let go of the image. And just open your eyes again. Now I want you to look again to the image, to that item that you have selected, and see, does it feel different or does it look different? And now just focus on all the details, and one by after the other, just let them go. Just let them go. Just let them go. So Anna, this was a very short exercise where we can train imagination and combine it with mindfulness. And sometimes just shifting our focus to the images that are around us can stop that monkey mind that we have in our brain and can help us relaxing. So the goal, actually there is no goal in doing that. The opportunity in doing that is to rest and replenish. And if you are going through a particular difficult time and the energy is very depleted, then the image that you can take is from nature, because nature, the beauty in nature, works extremely well to replenish us. So you can focus on a flower, on a tree, on the sky, on a plant in your apartment, anything that is nature-like, because the beauty automatically replenish our energy. So one of the things we can do every day to start training our mind to imagination is to do the same example. Focus on a particular image. When you wake up, it can be the shape of the cup of the coffee you're holding. It can be the colors of your toothbrush, anything that you have around you. Just pick it and notice it. And pay attention to all the details, and then consciously let them go. There is no expectation from this exercise. It's just a training you're doing to your brain. And why does it work? It's because similarly to what we do in meditation, what we do in mindfulness, we train our mind to be present in the moment and to stop focusing on the future, on the worries of the future, and stop recollecting the past. And the more we are in the present, the more we allow ourselves to imagine different opportunities in our life. Hope this was useful.
Francesca, just to... No, okay, go on.
Yeah, I just have a couple of points to close. I'll go quickly because I know we are running out of time. So the first one is a bit about my practice. So the practice I mentioned before is watercolor, because I think watercolor really allow us to train our brain to let go. So the merging with the water, the more friction you have that day in your body, the more water you add, and you just let go. Abstraction, we talk about it. I think everything is a perception. So nothing in what we see is just one reality. So everybody looking at a piece of abstract art will see something else. So what we can really see, where there is nothing to see, I think that's when we can start knowing more about ourselves. Another things I'm using, probably also because of my background working for many years for a Japanese company, I make my own colors and I practice the Zen practice of what they call mushin, which is a non-mind state as I make my own color. So at the end of the day, my work is very much charged with human energy. And all the work, I mean, this is a picture with my mom. I bring respect to the one who introduced me to watercolor. But all the work I'm doing is in the pursuit of reach the state which I called beingfulness. That beingfulness is where I feel emptiness is not the absence of people and things, is when we are not able, so the inability to express who we truly are. And beingfulness is the ultimate state of being. It's where your life feel fully lived and fully expressed, and where I call it where success is refined, and every morning feels like a weekend sunshine. And that's the objective I had the day I left my resignation. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I wanted to have the feeling of knowing that every morning feels like a weekend sunshine, and I don't need to wait for the weekend to express myself. So one of the messages before I close that I like to bring to the group is that our role as artists. And today in 1 hour, I could only touch the surface of what art can do for us and how art works. And I hope you all got something back to implement or to look at art differently. But I think art needs to be at the service of human development. So it's our role as artists to really revive the creative energy and imagination to the service of human understanding and human development. To take people as a group. Most of the people, when I speak about art as therapy, they think they can't do it because they're not artists. It's our role as artists to actually take people beyond what they can do alone. So help transform ourselves and then help transforming our community for the better of the social good. That's I hope is what we can all do as a community. And then before I close, I wanted to again thank you, Anna, and thank Fabrianoinacquarello for the opportunity. I hope this conversation today was just the beginning of something that we can all do together, because I really like to build a community of people that have resonated with the message today. So, and one of the things I love you to do is to take one painting after this session today and ask and treat it as a teacher and ask the painting, what do I need to know? I would love to know what the experience will be. And if you can post it on the Fabrianoinacquarello Facebook page and just tag me, so just put my at Francesca Ciaudano on the post on their page, so I can see, I can be notified when you're posting and I can answer, because I really love to have a conversation about this topic and also knowing how you feel art is healing and helping your life. So thank you, Anna.
Francesca, once again, we thank you a lot, of course, and thank you mostly for sharing your experience. That is something that is not, it is often complicated, and you were very generous. But once again, please, because it is very close to our eyes, say it once again, what is the role of the artist according to you in this conversation we had?
Yes, so thanks for giving me the chance again. I think all as artists, we have the opportunity to use art at the service of human development. So art should not be confined in only museums and galleries, should not create separation, should actually help restore and revive the creative energy that is innate within all of us. And I think we have a role in playing, and I think that now is the time more than ever to promote that transformation.
And Francesca, I think we have to share with the audience that we didn't decide to each other that we were talking about this topic and this item we arrived just now. But you made my day because actually this is a topic that we have been talking for years with the artists, and it is actually what I feel is most important in our relation to art. Thank you, Francesca, very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for giving me the stage.
Okay, bye-bye. See you
Bye.
soon in Italy or Dubai.
And thanks to everybody who was listening for 1 hour.
Bye.